Thank you very much. The next item of business is consideration of Business Motion 23705 in the name of Graham Day on behalf of the Bureau, setting out changes to this week's business. Could I call on Miles Briggs to move this motion?
Moved, Presiding Officer.
Thank you very much, Mr Briggs. No member has indicated they wish to speak on the motion. Therefore, the question is that motion 23705 be agreed. Are we all agreed? We are agreed. Thank you. We're going to turn now to topical questions. And our first question today is from Stuart Stevenson.
To ask the Scottish Government whether it will provide an update on the UK Government's Brexit negotiations and their potential impact on Scotland. Cabinet Secretary Michael Russell, who joins us remotely.
Presiding Officer, our understanding is that negotiations are continuing between the UK Government and the European Union, with significant differences remaining in relation to level playing field and fisheries. Throughout the Brexit process, we have sought meaningful engagement to ensure that Scotland's interests are protected, but unfortunately this has not been forthcoming. It remains the case even at this endgame stage, where we're largely unsighted on process and progress or any lack thereof. Engagement with the UK Government, especially at ministerial level, tells us little beyond what we already know in the media. We've had no ministerial engagement since the last Joint Ministerial Committee on the 3rd of December. By the Prime Minister's own admission, the chances of a no-deal outcome are increasing. That would be absolutely catastrophic for Scotland and must be avoided. I should be clear, however, that even if a deal can still be secured, it will be a very low deal. It will represent an extremely hard Brexit. It will, for example, take Scotland out of the single market and the customs union, and it will end freedom of movement, hitting jobs and living standards hard. Our modelling of a basic trade agreement of the type the UK Government wants to negotiate finds that Scottish GDP is estimated to be 6.1% lower by 2030 compared to continued EU membership. That equates to a loss equivalent to £1,600 per person in Scotland. And of course, the impact of a no deal would be even worse.
Stuart Stevenson.
Can I thank the Cabinet Secretary for his answer and join him in being appalled that since the 1st of December, Scottish ministers have not been engaged in the endgame of a very difficult set of negotiations made difficult by the Tory government. I want to ask about the Erasmus Plus scheme in particular, where I understand that post-Brexit participation agreement has failed to be reached, and wonder whether the Cabinet Secretary can tell us about the prospective impact on students in a world where we're told we're going to have to build new relationships and trade with countries across the world.
Cabinet Secretary.
Presiding Officer, the Scottish Government's always been clear that full association to Erasmus Plus is in the best interest of Scotland, and indeed Wales and Scotland particularly have argued on every occasion that if the UK decided not to proceed with it, then Wales and Scotland should proceed with Erasmus. It supports not only our universities, but colleges, schools, sports, youth and community groups in mobility exchanges with other countries in Europe. It's a transformational experience. Scotland has done very well out of it. It would be mad not to proceed with it. And if that is the UK's decision, it would be madder still to try and prevent Scotland and Wales from taking part.
And Stuart Stevenson.
In 1931, my mother was the beneficiary of a scheme that took her to study in France. But today's generation look as if they will not be as fortunate as my mother was 90 years ago. With only a few days before the end of the transition period, and we're being left in the dark. Does the Cabinet Secretary share my very serious concern about the effect this will have on our students and indeed our community's future?
Cabinet Secretary.
I do understand that, and indeed one of my predecessors as President of the SNP, Winnie Ewing, was a prime mover in Erasmus as it was getting underway in its previous incarnations. We really do need to get clarity on this, and let us hope that that clarity means that Erasmus will continue. To damage the opportunities of our learners and our young people, to threaten their life experiences, to undermine our institutions in securing the funding needing to support their ambitions, that would be, as I say, mad. Institutions that take part in Erasmus need time to prepare, and this has already been deeply, deeply damaging to them. I do hope the UK is listening on this, though it seems to be listening on nothing else.
Thank you very much. Moving on to question 2, Monica Lennon.
Thank you, Presiding Officer.
to ask the Scottish Government what action it is taking in response to the NRS publication Drug-related deaths in Scotland in 2019 in order to prevent further drug-related deaths.
Minister Joe Fitzpatrick.
Firstly, I would like to convey my condolences to the family, friends and loved ones of the 1,264 people who have lost their lives. Each one of these deaths is an untimely tragedy. What we face in terms of drug deaths is a public health emergency, and tackling it remains a priority for me and this government. The Drug Death Task Force recently published its forward plan that outlines the longer-term interventions we're putting in place to tackle this problem, and I'll provide a further update to Parliament in my statement this afternoon.
Monica Lennon.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. On behalf of Scottish Labour, I express sorrow for all the lives that have been lost and send our condolences to those who are bereaved. Today, we remember the people behind the statistics. They died because they were failed by decision makers, failed by the system. I heard the Minister's response, but it is far from good enough. Time and time again, the Scottish Government was warned by dozens of organisations to properly fund treatment and recovery services, but delivered real terms cuts. Calls for bold and urgent action have not been acted on. How can the Minister say in his press release today that the Scottish Government is doing everything in its powers when residential rehab beds are lying empty? How can the Minister say he's doing all he can when he has snubbed volunteers running an overdose prevention centre in Glasgow? Last year's figures revealed Scotland's drug death rate was the highest in the world. Even more people have died since then. Does he accept responsibility for this devastating increase?
Minister.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. Presiding Officer, I'm the Minister with responsibility, so yes, I accept responsibility for the actions I'm taking. I think in the last 2 years we have taken considerable action to improve the service, and I have to say that the idea that I'm not listening to wider stakeholders is just not factual. It's one of the things that I've taken great care to do since being appointed to this post, is to listen to people across Scotland with lived and living experience, and those who are on the front line in this public health emergency. The member implied in our question a cut in funding, but the fact is that since 2015-16 there has been a 27% increase in the funding, up to 95.3 million now. Every year since I've been in post, I've been pleased that we have been able to, the government has announced an increase in the budget for this area of work, and last year there was then an additional increase to support the work of the task force. But every single one of these deaths is, as the member says, a tragedy, and we need to continue to look at how we can work differently to turn these numbers around and save these unnecessary deaths.
Monica Lennon.
Presiding Officer, I know enough from family experience that the first step towards recovery from addiction begins with recognising and admitting there is a problem. However, what we're hearing from the Public Health Minister today still sounds to me like denial. The figures today reveal a dreadful record that has occurred on the watch of Joe Fitzpatrick. There is still no radical plan, no urgency, no humility and no ambition for how we can reverse this trend any time soon. The public needs to have confidence in the Public Health Minister to lead us out of this human rights tragedy. These shocking statistics and his woeful response give us none. Now, the Minister may have tried his best, but it's not good enough. Minister, I'm sorry to say it, but I do believe your time is up. Will he please do the decent thing? Will he do the decent thing, resign and please make way for fresh leadership?
Minister Joe Fitzpatrick.
I thank the member for her comments. Her views, I've heard her views. Fortunately, I have great confidence that across Scotland, many of the people who are working at the front end of this public health emergency take a different view and continue to work really hard to turn this around. It's easy to call names. It's easy to personalise. I'm disappointed it's come from Monica Lennon, because while I expect it from others within our benches, I don't generally expect it from her. These figures are a tragedy, so I think I'll leave it there.
And Shona Robertson to be followed by Miles Briggs.
Thank you. Obviously, my thoughts are with the families and loved ones affected, and it will be a really tough day for them particularly. In Dundee, 56 of the 72 recorded deaths have been attributed to the use of street Valium. It's almost 4 out of 5 deaths in the city. And clearly the increasing use of benzodiazepines are one of the primary causes of drug deaths in Dundee. Can the Minister say what action has been taken to tackle their manufacture and distribution alongside the general issue of stopping this increased use of street Valium?
Minister.
A key reason behind these numbers, we think, is the availability of these drugs and their extremely low price, coupled with the unknown content and potency of the substances used to make the tablets. I will shortly be making a statement to the Chamber where I'll set out a bit more detail with some of the specific actions we're taking in relation to this matter in specific.
Thank you. And Miles Briggs.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. Today is another sad day for Scotland, but the facts speak for themselves, Minister. Over the last 13 years, we have seen £47 million cut from drug and alcohol partnerships, and we've seen the loss of over 300 rehab beds across Scotland. And we're asking ourselves, why have we got to this point today? So can I ask the Minister, Parliament is increasingly losing confidence in the Government's Drug Deaths Task Force. Will the Minister today agree to urgent cross-party summit on this issue? We have to do something about it. Another year with another 6% rise is just totally unacceptable. Minister.
I meet regularly with members from all parties who want to engage on this matter. The truth is some of the figures that Mr Briggs mentions are not don't stand up to proper analysis. In terms of rehab beds, I would urge members to look at the work of the rehab working group led by Dr David McCartney, which is a robust piece of work which is helping us look at how, as we said in our strategy, we will look to improve the access to rehabilitation.
Thank you. There are a number of other members who wish to ask a question on this, but all are due to down to ask a question on the drugs death statement later, so they'll get a chance later. Question number 3, Liam MacArthur.
Thank you very much. To ask the Scottish Government what its response is to the Auditor General's report stating that policing in Scotland is not financially sustainable.
Cabinet Secretary Hamza Youssef.
Well, Scotland is well served by its police service, whose key role in keeping communities safe has been highlighted by the COVID-19 pandemic. I know something that all members will want to recognise. There is much in the Auditor General's report which is to be welcomed. It recognises the improvements and progress across organisational leadership, capacity, governance, financial planning and management, and that the Scottish Police Authority has built on the progress highlighted in last year's report. Despite constraints on Scotland's public services through a decade of UK austerity, our investment in policing this year has increased by 60 million to more than 1.2 billion. We've also given the SPA an additional 8.2 million to mitigate the impacts of COVID-19 on the policing budget. Future policing requirements will be considered, of course, as part of the budget process, and will continue to support the SPA to address the findings of the report and to work closely with the SPA and Police Scotland to consider options to address the challenge of financial sustainability.
Liam MacArthur.
Thank you. The Cabinet Secretary is right that Scotland is well served by its police officers and staff, but Audit Scotland's latest report leaves the SPA's aim of achieving financial balance by 2021 in tatters. It makes matters worse. Without significant action, Audit Scotland warned the deficit is set to increase. Brexit, Euro 2020 and the COP26, all while policing a pandemic, mean next year could be the busiest ever for Scotland's police force. The challenges are new, but the financial problems are not. There have been bailouts ever since Police Scotland's inception. At what point does a bailout just become the budget?
Cabinet Secretary.
Well, a couple of things to just make sure that I refresh Liam MacArthur's memory. One is that outcomes are hugely important to people. Of course, we'll continue discussions on the finances of Police Scotland, but the outcomes from Police Scotland's hard work and endeavour has seen a fall in crime, a fall also in violent crime over the last decade, almost halved, in fact, over the last decade. So we've seen positive outcomes. We've seen the fact that sexual offences in particular, rape, has been investigated in a level and in a way consistently across Scotland that wasn't done prior to Police Scotland's inception. That's not my words, but in fact the words of many stakeholders who are experts in this. So the outcomes of Police Scotland, I think, are indisputable. They have been positive right across the board. In terms of funding, I hear what Lee MacArthur says. I'm no doubt, of course, that the Finance Secretary will engage with Liberal Democrats in good faith when it comes to the budget process. And these points that he makes about the finances are, of course, are points that can be taken up in that budget process.
Lee MacArthur.
The Cabinet Secretary will be aware that one of the areas of exponential growth and pressures on Police Scotland is in relation to mental health. Officers spend entire shifts often accompanying vulnerable people to A&E. Although not best equipped for this role, police are being left to pick up the pieces of Scotland's mental health crisis. 85% of revenue expenditure relates to staffing, so this time puts huge pressure on police resources. The Cabinet Secretary will be aware that Scottish Liberal Democrats have long campaigned for more mental health professionals to be based in A&Es and police stations. But the rollout so far has been sluggish, and of the 800 new workers promised by the Scottish Government, police stations have only seen an additional 12. When will police stations see their fair share to help ease this burden?
Cabinet Secretary.
Well, I don't accept Lee MacArthur's characterisation of this work as being sluggish at all. He knows that the Mental Health Strategy 2017 to 2027 outlines our commitment to fund 800 additional mental health workers in key settings by 21-22. They are making good progress. We are on course to deliver that commitment with 485 whole-time equivalents mental health posts being recruited. That was as of July. I'm certain the figure will be higher. So they've met 60% of that target, and there's still time to go. In terms of the numbers that are recruited in police custody, I think it is important when it comes to Action 15 of the Mental Health Strategy, which commits to those 800 additional places. Although we have committed to provide the funding for those 800 additional mental health workers, it is the fact that workforce planning is conducted by integration authorities according to the needs of their population. So if Lee MacArthur thinks that more mental health workers should be in X, Y or Z custody setting, then he should be making that known to the local integration authorities. And of course we can take that conversation up. So I think actually the progress on this Action 15, the recruitment of mental health workers has been positive. There's still a way to go, of course, to meet that commitment in 21-22, and I'm certain that there will be more mental health workers recruited to police custody settings.
Liam Kerr, followed by Rudy Grant.
Presiding Officer, Audit Scotland said in their report that Police Scotland have had to rely on existing resources to finance change. The Angelini report notes budgetary constraints prevented procurement of body-worn cameras. So will the SNP commit to provide the funding to roll out body-worn cameras?
Cabinet Secretary.
So I should say, of course, we did increase Police Scotland's funding by 60 million. That was 10 million more than what the Conservatives asked for in the last budget. When it comes to body-worn cameras, of course, it is ultimately an operational decision for the Chief Constable to decide how he spends the capital funding that we provide for. Now, if in those budget discussions he makes it clear that he would like money for body-worn cameras or for any other issue, of course, that will be considered as part of that budget discussion. I should say, Chief Constable, myself, the interim chair of the SPA, have met with the Finance Secretary on 2 occasions. We plan to meet again in the new year. So those budget discussions are well underway. And of course, they will continue with the Conservatives. And if they believe that body-worn cameras should be part of that budget process, should be part of that financial settlement, then of course we'll engage in good faith.
Rhoda Grant, to be followed by Rona Mackay.
This Audit Scotland report, like others in the past, highlights the lack of workforce planning. And the force faced a 750 cut in officers last year, saved by 11th-hour reprieve due to Brexit. Will the force face this cut of officers this year? And if so, does he believe those are sustainable officer number?
Cabinet Secretary.
Again, I'm not sure I accept the characterisation of a last-minute reprieve. It was always the case that where there was a budget deficit, that the government said that they would cover that budget deficit, therefore allowing the Chief Constable, with his operational decision, to maintain police numbers at above 1,000. And it's important to note that since this government has been in power, there have been over 1,000 additional police officers recruited. It is because of that funding that we've provided and the assurances around the budget deficit, which we have a long-term plan to reduce over the period, that they have been able to maintain that at 1,000 additional officers. So when it comes to the next budget and for 21-22, as I say, those budget discussions are continuing, but I certainly see no reason why officer numbers would be reduced, in particular given the pressures on policing that there will be over the next 12 months.
And Rona Mackay.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. The Auditor General's review shows progress has been made despite a decade of UK austerity. Uncertainty around coronavirus and Brexit have hampered efforts. Can the Scottish Government confirm what additional costs were spent on policing due to the risks associated with EU withdrawal?
Cabinet Secretary.
Well, Police Scotland has devoted significant resource and time to the management of any operational impact on policing and the wider justice system in relation to Brexit. The Scottish Government continues to work closely with the SPA and Police Scotland in planning for the consequences of the EU exit, working through an ongoing operational and financial implications. So the additional 60 million funding that we've given for the SPA in this year's budget allows police officer numbers, as I say, to be maintained throughout the year. But it's not only the financial impacts of Brexit, but clearly, again, those real-life community impacts that will be felt because of Brexit will mean that, for example, there will not be access to the European arrest warrant, which we know has helped to catch criminals who have absconded and fled overseas. It means that Police Scotland will not have direct access to things like the Schengen Information System, which gives them alerts of people who are wanted or indeed missing from other countries that are in Scotland. All of these operational tools are important in order to keep our community safe, and that will be where the real impact on justice, home affairs and issues to do with policing will be felt in our communities.
Thank you very much, and that concludes topical questions. We're going to move on now.